So Sir James Frazer Stirling was a British architect, as you can see, born the 22nd of April, 1926, and died in 1992, was a British architect. Stirling worked in partnership with James Gowan from 1956 to 1963, then with Michael Wilford from 1971 until 1992. As I mentioned, he did receive the Pritzker Prize in Architecture and was a very important British architect. And you can see he became a sir. I saw somewhere, this expression that he is the Francis Bacon of British architecture. In my opinion, and I place that question mark, I think this phrasing is a little bit problematic. Francis Bacon was indeed a very important British painter, but I wouldn't really see a resemblance between the spirit of the paintings of Francis Bacon and the spirit of the architecture of James Stirling. This was the man. Here he is again, truly a brilliant architect. Unfortunately, he had the unluck of receiving in his office Leon Krier, who was a young man at the time. And in my opinion, Leon Krier and postmodernism affected the works of James Stirling dramatically. Now, of course, he is also responsible for allowing himself to be affected by Leon Krier and postmodernism. I'm not trying to excuse him, far from it. But I did attend a lecture by him at Columbia University, and it was actually very shortly before he died, in fact. Yeah, he died in 1992. So I think in 1991, and I even wrote a text apropos of James Stirling's lecture, which if you want, I could send it to you. Some drawings by James Stirling. An interesting architect and a skillful architect, a talented architect. This is a sketch for an important museum in Stuttgart, which he built, and we are going to see the work. Now we'll see the early works when he worked together with James Gowan, and perhaps I should have had pictures of James Gowan too, because I think they made an excellent partnership, and I don't want to be unfair. So they worked together from 1956 to 1963. It is a picture with him. I didn't look at while James Stirling is tracing lines there on the drafting board. They were younger, or younger. Anyway, 1958, Flats on Ham Common with James Gowan. They worked together. I like these buildings very much. They show skill already, and the handling of materials is proper, the structure in concrete and then brick walls, and it has a vigorous honesty. Nothing, fluid or spectacular or exotic, no, but they are good buildings, good blocks of flats. And nothing wrong with that. James Stirling and I forgot the first name of it. Let me look actually. James as well, yes. They're both James. James Gowan and James Stirling. I want to say that mid-century, mid-20th century, there was often an excellent architecture being built. Maybe because there was a certain optimism, the Second World War ended, so it was like a new beginning. Also, if you are interested in church architecture, because we talked earlier about it, in Germany and Austria and Switzerland, there was a very fine church architecture, modern architecture being built. Excellent architecture. In fact, I imagine some books were written about it. If not, I feel like doing it, because that architecture, you know, modern through and through, for church, you know, for the church function, for sacred buildings. At that time, mid 20th century, was excellent. But this is housing. But it's still very high quality, and yet, again, I don't even think these are expensive blocks of flats, you know, like intended for an elite. No, I don't know who this person is here. Anyway, also what we see here is access to the apartments from a corridor, which could have been exterior. I don't know if here it is exterior. It looks like it is, but then I see the glass on both sides. It's very easy to do good apartment buildings with an exterior corridor, which also gives the chance for cross ventilation for the apartments, which is a quality always, and at the time of climate change, even more so. Anyway, James Gowan and James Stirling, we are going to see some great modern buildings by them. Now, this one is one of them, and one of the best known, the Leicester University, 1959. So it's more than 60 years old. The Faculty of Engineering. It's a great building. It's a great building. You know, if you love modernism, you cannot, you know, avoid liking this building. It's audacious, it's clear, it's structural, it's sculptural, it's everything, and it shows clearly the talent of James Stirling together with James Gowan. It's a you know, a building dedicated to learning. It's a university, but it has this vigor of an industrial building somehow. And so that it crossed the frontier between educational and, you know, production, so to speak. Sorry about this salami thing. It's one of the famous buildings, this building, the engineering university, the University of Engineering at Leicester University, the engineering building at this university in Leicester. You know, this is a book published just about this building by Phaidon Press. The vehicle of the future, the bicycle, in some parts of the world, even of the present, and even of some past, no, like Scandinavian countries and so on. A great invention, the bicycle, because it doesn't pollute. You exercise, it's healthy, it doesn't need you know, a fuel. It's true, it's for one person, maybe two, through you know, an extravagant model, maybe even three, but that's it. The Camberwell School Assembly Hall in London, 1961. Here it is. Nothing, you know, outrageous or anything, but, you know, still an interesting building, still architecture. I mean, look at the buildings around it. You know, this stands out still after 60 years. True architecture can only be creative. That's it. If it's not creative, it's not architecture, it's building. Well, you know, as an architect, you choose. You want to do architecture or you want to do just a building? If you want to do just a building, then you can do so, but I'm not sure you truly deserve being called an architect. Walter Gropius, the founder of the Bauhaus, said, and I'm not sure he was totally right, but he said, architecture begins where the work of the engineer ends. I don't quite agree with him, but it's true that, architecture goes beyond structure, beyond the building. And I think a building becomes architecture through art when it assumes some kind of an artistic side or element, or I don't know how to call it. 1964, St. Andrews University, Andrew Melville Hall of Residence, a larger building. A creative architect works with different angles. It's creation. No, you create something new, and when there is creativity, you smell it, so to speak. You see it. It's different. Creativity has to do with difference, because if you do a work which is not different from many others or others, that cannot be truly called creativity. All the creative architects, and in fact, I'm redundant, because again, an architect is supposed to be creative, because if he or she is not creative, is not an architect. I know there are architects who work in bureaucracy, for the government, for various institutions. I'm talking here about the practicing architects who are active within the field of what architecture stands for, even if they don't have an office. Like, for example, Levi-Woods, a force in recent architecture, and one very loved and admired by many young architects, and not only young. He died in 2012. He said, you don't need an office to be creative in architecture. He himself, he created a so-called visionary architecture. Nobody asked him to do those drawings, many beautiful drawings. He did them because he had a pressing desire to express. Like Louis Kahn said, spirit in will to express can make the great sun seem small. That's the source, that's the catalyst, the desire to express. If you have that desire, that urging desire, pressing desire within you, in your soul, in your imagination, in your mind, you better let it out. Like Stephen Hall said, if there is idealism in you, bring it out, bring it forward, of course. And if you cannot build, if you don't have clients, if for who knows what reasons you don't have public relations, you are not connected, you can still express yourself through drawings, through modeling, digitally or manually, working for competitions and so on. Nobody can truly stop you from expressing your love of architecture. But when we talk about love, we talk about the soul, no? I mean, it belongs to the soul. If you have that within you, you are lucky. And you should never give up on it. It's the most precious thing that you have. Unfortunately, education often kills that love, or is trying its best to kill that love. And that's a big problem. And that's why today I send that message, in a way, crucifixion could be connected, of course, through some kind of poetic license, to correctura, those who crucified Christ wanted to correct him and punish him. punish him for his courage, his audacity, his love of humankind. The same way schools of architecture punish a student often for having a tumultuous love or feelings for architecture. And it's a great loss. In a way, indeed, the student is crucified, you know, metaphorically speaking. Let's hope it will never happen, you know, factually. Cambridge University, the Faculty of History, 1968, the tumultuous year 1968, when the students fought for a new world, and when you know, there were great strikes, students' manifestations in Paris, in London, in the United States, for a world without wars, make love but not war. That's what they kept saying. Of course, things are not so simple, but in essence, they were right, you know. And then the music in London and you know, Great Britain erupted. Beautiful music, energetic. You know that's music. So look at this building in Cambridge, again, a very old and prestigious university. Some might even describe maybe, you know, very stable and maybe even conformist in a way, but you see, they welcomed, and even Oxford University, I mean, Oxford is Cambridge, you know, invited Zaha and other innovative architects to build for them. So this building was built for Cambridge by James Gowan and James Stirling and James Gowan. I don't know if we should change the order, but it probably doesn't matter. It's a good building. It's a good building. And again, the courage to embrace the new, to promote the new is a good thing, you know, because how else are you to move forward if you don't promote the new? 1968. James Stirling and James Gowan. James Stirling, as I said, laureate of the Pritzker Prize. I forgot exactly in what year, maybe 1981. It's possible. Anyway, but look at the plans and look at the sections. You know, they are clear, but they are clearly creative. You know, you can understand the creative project, a creative building from the first sketches sometimes. You know, like you look at the sketches of John Hudson for the opera in Sydney. You look here, these drawings, they are essentially, you know, diagrammatic drawings, but you feel the spirit of architecture and the creativeness of the architect or architects. That's when architecture is beautiful, really, and it is beautiful. But in order for it to be beautiful, it has to be creative. Otherwise, it's not architecture. It's something else. Maybe building, or I don't know, but not architecture. I said this before, and allow me to repeat it. Paul Valéry, the important French poet, wrote a little book called Eupalinos ou l'architecte. Eupalinos, or the architect. And he said that there are three kinds of builders. One who places a stone above another stone, that's a builder. Then you have one who places a stone above another stone and makes them talk. He is the master builder. But the third one places a stone above another stone and makes them sing. Yes, sing. His name is Eupalinos, or the architect. Now, maybe this language is too poetical for us today, cynical as we are, but I think Paul Valéry was right. When you make the stones sing, and they don't have to be only stones, of course, it's about matter, materials. If you make them sing, in other words, you transform inanimate matter into an animated one, by spirit, by talent, by inspiration, then you deserve the name Eupalinos. That's how he called that the architect. I don't know how he arrived at the name Eupalinos, but it doesn't matter. We can replace that name Eupalinos with our own names if we deserve to do so. And it's really simple. You have to be creative. You have to put your own soul, your own imagination into the work. If you give birth to a project, to a building, just like a couple gives birth to a baby, it's the same thing. You generate a new life. That crying baby, when he leaves the womb, is a creation. Is life. It's life itself, and that's how architecture should be too, I think. The Queen's College, the Flory building, 1971, Oxford. Even here, you see, non-conventionality. You see the building kind of like an organism, and again, structure doesn't have to be, just horizontals and verticals. Here, you don't have, the typical vertical column, an axonometric and, model or a rendering, whatever it is. And here is the building. James Stirling and James Gowan. Or maybe by that time he didn't work any longer with James Gowan, I think. But again, you see that James Stirling was excellent at organizing the masses, organizing the functions and expressing them in a rather sincere way, architectonically or architecturally. But the building still stands properly, against the passage of time. It's still interesting and alive. Unfortunately, James Stirling changed, and we are going to arrive at his later works, which in my opinion are not so good, and they are not so good because he was affected by some even called it, classicism or neoclassicism. He was affected by postmodernism, and I think also by the presence of Leo Krier in his office, who probably had a strong enough personality to influence him. But again, I don't want to excuse him. Olivetti Training Center, 1972. It's clear. On the left, we have the old. On the right, we have the new. That's it. And the new is new indeed, as it should be. How else are we to assert our lives? Just repeating what was previously? But yes, we do have to know the past in order to transcend it, perhaps. This is a very, high-tech building in a way. It's for Olivetti, so it has a technological component. And it looks like it, indeed. And you see the dialogue, even the dialectics between the new and the old are fine. He didn't have to mimic the same architecture as the old one. No, he brought in one which was distinctly new. So you have here harmony through contrast. This was demolished, 1976, Southgate social housing, that is inexpensive housing. And it's too bad it was demolished, Well, some people probably didn't like it, but even this is an original architectural work. You see, even for a program like social housing, you can do architecture. In fact, I think for a true architect, cannot be otherwise. Really, it cannot be otherwise. You have to create something that is alive, that is new, that is interesting. Well, some people might say this is kind of a brutalist work. You have to understand this was a work with a low budget. But even with a low budget, he created architecture. Now, if people liked it or didn't like it, this happens. There were important buildings demolished in the history of the world or in the history of architecture. I regret it was demolished. Maybe it needed a little bit of, no, I would not have destroyed them in any way. And I think if these buildings would have been just like this in the present, they would not have been demolished, because it's not sustainable at all to demolish things which obviously structurally were just sound, very sound. Maybe a little bit of weakening of the masculinist aesthetics, maybe bring in some softening of the image, maybe bring in ivy, and they would have been fine. I'm absolutely sure the plans were fine. The functioning of the apartments was fine. People, there was around that time some kind of adverse perception of brutalism, but now brutalism is back in fashion, actually. It's sad that this building, okay, maybe it was not the most inspired work by James Stirling, but I personally, if I had the chance, I could have made a proposal to keep the buildings and to, maybe bring in color, maybe change a little bit of the proportion of certain things through just through almost ornamental work. Don't touch structure. It could have been done. The potential was here, and they prefer to demolish it. Sad, very, very sad. Stuttgart, now we arrive at the work which I mentioned, is an important work by him, and by now he was already troubled, so to speak, by the wings of postmodernity, but this is a good building. Neue Staatsgalerie, the new gallery of art in Stuttgart, 1984. I like this building. This is the plan. And you'll see in this building Stirling's ability to negotiate between various forms to create a whole of a hybrid encounter between disparate things. And this is not easy to do. But look at it. It's it almost has some elements of deconstruction, and actually deconstruction came into being not much later. Patrick Schumacher said that there were two intermediate, I forgot how he called them, transitory styles or so, at the end of the 20th century. The first one was postmodernism, and then deconstructivism. Here we see an anticipation a little bit of deconstructivism, because it has a certain fragmentarism that is obvious. But also the walls that James Stirling built refer rather to postmodernism, not so much to deconstruction. But the fragmentation is almost deconstructivist. The walls, this is not the kind of wall the deconstructivist would build. But what is interesting is also the use of color. These kind of colors are not so common. Well, now they are beginning to be in many projects published on Sucker Punch Daily. But at that time, and in general, these are not who would use pink in architecture, not very often. Here we see clearly, flirtation with history, with these rather funny columns. There is already a certain sympathy from James Stirling towards what we call history. But there are interesting things even here, you know, if you look at this detail, you know, this block that is a little bit off, you see from the shadow, as if it's a commentary on the ephemerality in a way of the wall, of the structure, you know, like you see here. It's a capricious, you know, way of suggesting, you know, the possible coming apart of the building in time. It's interesting, it's creative again, and you see at the bottom, you know, I am sure these were planned. They didn't just, you know, were left here or anything. It's a commentary, you know, on maybe an expression of a little bit of melancholia, I don't know. So this is in Stuttgart. This work you can see, you know, you take the bus if you don't want to fly, but you can take the plane, and it might be even less expensive than the bus. And I don't know, 1-2 hours you are in Stuttgart, and you can see not only this building, but also the Weissenhof colony. The Stuttgart has important architectural works. Again in Cambridge, but this time in Massachusetts, Harvard University, the Fogg Museum, 1984. Here, postmodernism is more obviously present. Still a little bit transformed, but not radically. It's still, he seemed to have some doubts at that time about which way to go. You see, this building is at the first sight almost a typical, you know, kind of modernistic building, but here we see something else. The monumentality of this entrance here. But still, you know, interesting. So this is at Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, this time, not Great Britain. The Tate Britain, the Flory Galleries, an extension, 1987 in London. I personally like more their earlier works. I say there when he worked together with James Gowan, and even the first years after they separated. (1997). So he died in 1992, and this was built 5 years afterwards. It's an interesting building, but still, I don't know. But I still find it interesting. I usually don't like postmodern architecture at all, but this one still has vigor, and you can tell, you know, he was a talented designer, a talented architect. It doesn't matter where you look at, you know, towards the building, it still has something to offer that is, you know, interesting, enticing, even the plan of the building. James Stirling. I think he received the Pritzker Prize in 1981, but I could be wrong. I didn't double check. Anyway, look at the plan. It is interesting. It is enticing. It is exciting. You know, there are things that perhaps John Ruskin was right. The most beautiful things are those that are the most useless. And he gave as an example the peacock's tail and the lily, the, you know, the plant, the flower. And even here, you know, you say perhaps the most interesting things, the most beautiful even, are those that are almost useless. Why? Because playfulness is an organic part of creativity. When you work and you play and you work, you combine the two, and then the parts of the building that are the most interesting are those that in a way are the least responsible or the most irresponsible, because they are playful. They assert a raison d'etre which is not lucrative or functional or measurable even. It's about freedom. That's it. That's it. You know, God asserted his freedom, you know, when he designed the wings of the butterfly or the tail of the peacock. Or the trees in the spring when they flower up and so on. The architect could do the same. The architect can and should, I would say, assert his or her freedom through playfulness. And then you get interesting things like here. That's it.